Hello, dear friends. This is Desiree Carlson from the International Association for Counseling in our interview series, The People Behind IAC. And today it is my pleasure to introduce to you to Naoise Kelly, our CEO, who will talk a little bit about his own perspective and will share some of his views from our association. Welcome, Naoise. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, hello, Desiree. Always good to see you. Thank you very much for arranging this and for all the other interviews you've been doing with IAC people. It's very much appreciated. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. I'm so excited that we're having this interview. We've been talking to so many people from IAC and you were missing because I know that you are so involved as the CEO and have such a perspective about what's going on and where we're going. So I'm really curious about this interview.
Great. Me too. Thank you.
So what can you tell us, just to start, before we go into the questions that we prepared, what would you say about IAC, just whatever comes naturally, and then we'll go into more detail.
Sure. Well, IAC is an international non-governmental organization, an INGO. And it's going a long time now. It's founded in 1966, so nearly 55 years ago. And the whole purpose is to try and improve people's lives and well-being through having counseling more widely available. So we have a vision statement for the organization, which is a world where counseling is available to all. So really, we're talking about having more and better counseling available in the world's 195 countries. So it's a big project, a lot of ambitious aims there. And the way we do it is like every other organization. We have areas of work and projects, and ours are areas like education, research, policy, advocacy, standards, and professional development, and so on. So yeah, so there's lots going on there. I suppose something that distinguishes IAC and is an important part of our identity, it comes from our connection to United Nations organizations and agencies. So in 1966, when it was founded by a man called Hans Hochster, and also he was assisted by Jean Piaget at the time. Well, these luminaries, these people, they were really ahead of their time, and they believed in counseling as a profession, and also because of their experiences in World War II, they saw counseling as really, they focused on how counseling could play its part in creating a more peaceful society. That was their aim. So they advocated for counseling at United Nations organizations, and we still do that today, and we continue that on with the UN agencies that we have official relations with, be it consultative status or accreditation and so forth. So those agencies, UN agencies, are ones that have an impact. Their decisions and their policies have an impact on counseling and counselors. So organizations like the World Health Organization, obviously the area of mental health comes under their remit. UNESCO, which is the United Nations Education, Science and Culture Organization, so counselor education comes in under that. The UNICEF, the Children's Emergency Fund, so counseling and children. And the ILO, the labor organization, it's 100 years old. It's that organization, and everywhere where mental health and counseling connects with workplaces, and so on. There's other organizations, and really those UN agencies and their aims from their foundations, such as peace building and reconciliation and human rights and human development and improving relations between countries and so forth. That's very similar to the principles and aims of IAC, and also to the work of counselors themselves. So it's that connection is very important to us, and when we look at the coronavirus, for example, and you think about the WHO advice to governments, that's followed very closely. So it's very important for us that counselling has a voice at these UN agencies that make decisions on health and social policies, and to make sure that counselling is included alongside all of the other mental health and psychosocial professions that they make decisions about. So that's, in a snapshot, some of the work we do, but the UN connection is very important to us and important to the development of the profession.
Thank you for giving us that perspective. I think that understanding where we come from and what are we connected with, it's so important for members and non-members to understand where we're going and why are we where we are. And I think we don't always get that, and it's really useful to understand it from your perspective. Thank you, Nisha. Now, I see that you have a lot of connection with these other organizations, and IAC has that connection, and I imagine that you have a lot of perspective of what is happening globally. What do you think is happening around the world in counseling right now?
Well, like every other area of life, the coronavirus pandemic has had a huge impact on our profession. You know, the impact it's had on societies, on social systems, on health systems, on economies is huge. And what we've seen is the massive impact it's had on mental health systems, and also it has really shone a light on inequalities in those health systems as well. So all of this, I think, has brought about, you know, big changes for counsellors, individual counsellors, for their clients, obviously, for counselling associations, and for ourselves and for other NGOs. And I suppose in a strange way, even though the pandemic has been devastating and has had a devastating impact, there has been some opportunities created for mental health and for counselling within all of the devastation, as I say. For example, we're seeing mental health and counselling being put forward by governments in a way that it wasn't before. They're putting it forward as part of their public health policies. So when you hear on in countries, we hear on radio or adverts or leaflets about people minding their mental health, going for a walk, eating properly, talking to a friend, watching what media sources they follow, and not drinking too much alcohol, getting enough sleep, all those main messages that you've heard from so many other sources before, from counsellors and GPs and so forth. Now we're hearing them from governments, and they're placing emphasis on counselling and on mental health and talking to people. So that's something that's different. And so there's a real opportunity, we believe, for investment in this area, so that there's a more permanent impact of it. But it remains to be seen as to whether this will continue. Hopefully it will, but that's certainly one big change we've noticed, counselling and mental health being included in public health policy very prominently in a way it wasn't before. I think same with kind of things like insurance companies. We see from different countries, different associations saying that insurance companies, where in places where they didn't recognize counselling before, are now offering it as part of their packages and things like that. So that's a good thing. Again, hopefully it will continue. But I suppose in practical terms, the big difference or the big change that the pandemic has brought about is everything or most things moving online. People working from home, telehealth, online counselling, and it's really arrived with the pandemic, and it looks likely to stay regardless of how long or how the pandemic plays out. So, you know, associations, education institutes, individual practitioners, everyone, educators, everything's been moved online. They've had to adapt to that. They've had to get used to that. And they may have been thinking about it before, but it just sped everything up. So that's a big change for everybody. And, you know, it was sped up and expedited necessarily because it's important. So the WHO, for example, they asked us to communicate with all of our members and our stakeholders. And I forget the phrase they used. It was something like, ask them to use all and every means they have of continuing the care that they're giving. So the WHO are conscious of, people stopping their counselling or not being, and they were saying, please just tell your members to do it by phone, do it online, continue whatever way they can, because it was so important. So that's one. And I think another thing we're seeing, only yesterday people were telling me about this in Australia, about school counselling. It's really shone a light on the importance of school counselling. There's a lot of very stressed out school kids and their parents, of course, and school counselling, which often isn't recognised the way it should be outside of a crisis time, is now being shown to be so important. So that's very good, and again, hopefully that lasts. What else? Let me think. Training, a lot of online training, stress management, anxiety management, managing fear. With a lot of counsellors who have clients coming in with extremely raised levels of anxiety and fear, a normal reaction to the pandemic, and so they have to in some cases retrain in terms of how to help people with that and help people how to manage their stress. And for the counsellors themselves, in many countries there isn't online counselling. It's still continuing face-to-face depending on the infection rates, and so that's an added worry, as it is for all healthcare workers. Will I get infected? So counsellors are looking at ways in which they can mind themselves while managing very difficult work environments in many cases. Apart from that, what else? Well, one thing I'm just thinking of your contribution, Desiree. We've seen and heard some very positive stories from around the world about associations offering free counselling to people in their countries or jurisdictions. And we've heard of them offering support as well to their own members. And I know that you had have a series of support groups for our members, and that's been very warmly received. So again, thanks for that. So yeah, I mean, you could go on for so long. Lots of big impact, health and social and economic impact. So that's impacted our profession too. And so that's.
But it's so important to understand that despite the crisis and despite all the suffering and difficult times that we are living, it is bringing so many opportunities. For IAC, definitely because of what we're focused on, and for counseling, but even for people. While you were describing all these different perspectives where schools found out that it's so important to have a time to reflect on what we're feeling, what we're doing, what could we do. And it's like going back to basics. So it seems that globally, the pandemic has brought light into very important matters that had been put behind or maybe not as prioritized. So I believe that for IAC, it's a great opportunity right now to go on with its mission and to help through our means, that it's basically bringing this support for counselors so they can bring that support in their own places.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now, what projects do you think people would be interested in, and why do you think people should join IAC? I mean, I'm putting two questions into one, but thinking that they are both very connected.
Yeah. Well, in terms of projects, I would encourage people to have a look at our website to see what we're doing, the different areas. The one that I would, that springs to mind is a project called the World Mapping of the Counselling Profession. And it is the largest piece of counselling research ever undertaken in the field of counselling. And that's an IAC project. We're doing it in partnership. And we're very pleased to have the CCPA, which is the Canadian Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, as partners, the ACA, the American Counselling Association, the University of Cologne in Germany, and Taylor's University in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And they've come on board as partners. And also it has endorsement of and the backing of the World Health Organization. So it's a great project. And basically we're looking to research and document the counselling profession in each of the world's countries. So we're looking to find out the landscape of counselling there. How many associations are there? How many education institutes offer counsellor education programs? And what kind of counselling services are available? Which ones are provided by the state, by the government? What's the level of recognition for the profession, or is there regulation, for example? And also things like the background. How did counselling start in that country? Did it come in through religion? Did it come through psychology, through school counselling? Just so we have the history and kind of know also about the current challenges and trends. And so at the end of it, we're going to have all of this information, some very detailed and some brief, for all of the countries of the world. And this will help us to be able to advocate for the profession, in terms of you have to have the facts and figures about your profession before you go looking to make changes. So it's an important project, and we're very happy with it at the moment. And we have a website dedicated to it, a research website. And at the moment, we have completed Latin America. We've completed 48 countries in Asia. We have completed the countries in Europe, and they're about to be uploaded. And also of the 55 countries in Africa, I think we've done about 30 of those. So it's really moving along, and we're very pleased. So that's an exciting project. And what's even better about it is when we have that information, we'll be able to see where the gaps are and to identify what we want to do next. So yeah, so that's one project. I think you also asked me what would I say to people who are thinking about joining.
Why would it be an interesting decision to join IAC?
Well, I think I think firstly we just say that people are very welcome. We really want people to join us and to get involved. I think it comes with a lot of benefits, and all of those are outlined on the website. But yeah, I think right now the counselling profession is growing exponentially. It's growing at a rate we have not seen before. From the mapping and from other information, we know that in every country there are more associations, and there are more counsellors in those associations. There are more counsellor education programs being offered. There are more services there. There's more need for counsellors. There will always be need. And so it's a good time to join, an interesting time to join. And all of this interest in counselling is coming from the broader interest in, well, one of the sources is the broad interest in mental health. That in so many countries we're seeing again governments finally getting the message about mental health and promoting it to a prominent place of importance. So counselling, along with all the other mental health and psychosocial professions that help people in those circumstances, is getting a bounce from that. There's a huge amount of interest in it, and so I think if people join IAC, obviously it's an international organization. People, if there's no association in their country, they might be interested in joining that as their primary association. And then for others who are in countries where there are national associations, join that. And then perhaps you might be interested in a second membership, and interested in looking beyond your own country, interested in the international scene and connecting with other counsellors and other people. So I think it's a very beneficial experience to hear from counsellors and connect with counsellors in other parts of the world. And also, I think, given that there's so much more international counselling happening now, sped up again by coronavirus, etc., that there's a lot of opportunities for online counselling across borders. And IAC is very much interested in that and very much at the forefront of thinking on that. So yeah, so you're very welcome. Come on in, that's what we say. And please have a look at our offerings and get in contact with us.
Thank you. Now, before we leave, I would like to ask you to change hats and tell us about your experience as a member and as a counselor being part of IAC. How has it been for you, and what has it meant to you?
It's been, excuse me, it's been a wonderful experience. And I joined the board of IAC back in 2013 or 2014, and to meet people from every part of the world and to have the opportunity to work with them, some of them extremely capable, intelligent individuals. It was a great expansion of my horizons. Before, I very much enjoyed working in Ireland in the counselling profession, but to then have another 194 countries to learn about and people to meet from those countries was has been very interesting. So yeah, it's been extremely interesting. And again, all of those things that we talked about being important parts of counselling, such as the psychological processes and internationalism and reconciliation and human development and so forth. They're all things that kind of all come together quite neatly within IAC. So not only is it professionally beneficial, but personally beneficial. And so I enjoy it very much indeed, Desiree.
Thank you. Well, thank you for this amazing interview. I think it's full of very valuable information, and I know that people will benefit from understanding and learning more about IAC, and also maybe wondering to join. I have had a wonderful experience myself, and I am very grateful to you. I think that part of your role as a CEO brings a lot of structure, and I was telling you before we started that you're the glue that tries to keep all these pieces working together, like coordinating all these diverse ways of working, and I think you're doing an amazing job, and I feel very honored working with you, and I wanted to say this out loud in front of others. I value a lot the way you've been working, and of course I really value IAC, but being with you here in the interview, I wanted to let you know that. And I'm very grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
Oh, you're more than welcome. So thank you very much, Desiree. Thank you.
Thank you. See you in our next interview.